Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's your favorite dark sorcerer here. Tonight, I'd like to discuss Santa Muarte and similar symbolatry worldwide in the pantheons. And I'm also drinking some green tea for relaxation. It's been a very busy day with this snowstorm and everything, so it's a good way to unwind. Now, when it comes to Santa Muarte, there are at least two various different paths. In Spain, you have what is called La Santa Muerte. Okay. La Santa Muerte is a holy patron in Spain. They actually erected a statue of her up on a big cliff. You probably noticed that in movies like, say, for an example, well, I was thinking of that one, Behind Enemy Lines, I think it is, starring that Owens guy. Outside of that, any movie starring Sniper, um, the Sniper trilogy with Tom Berenger, they went past it. A few others have also gone past the statue as well, but La Santa Muerte is more of a goddess of various different sorts. She is an agent of death, protection, love, you name it. However, you've also got the other variation, which is Santa Muerte, which is practiced in the southern parts of the United States, down into Latin America, down into South America. And we can actually see where splinter cells have actually branched off and formed their own type of, how should I say this, their own type of traditions, such as Quimbanda, Ambanda, Santeria, Palo Mayambi. These are just some of the splinter cells that have actually taken place and actually grown just as offshoots of Santa Muerte. They really don't have anything to do with Santa Muerte. They are just simply considered splinter cells. Much like the tree of life, each branch has a different denomination or a different style or tradition that has broken away from its traditional roots and formed its own. They still worship the same things like Loa or Ugan, the demigods to the gods and stuff like that. But it's not until you get into full on pantheon study that you actually see a wide range of gods and goddesses that are associated with death. Let's see here. People are chiming in. But we got a moron here trying to bring Satan into the mix. Has nothing to do with Santa Muerte or its splinter cells. So I'm going to ignore that one. But anyways, as I was saying, when we go into different traditions, such as Inca, we see Supe, the god of dead, or the god of the dead. If we go into Hades, or Greek rather, we go into Hades, the lord of the underworld. Egyptian mythology, we see the same thing with Anubis. We go into Norse mythology, we can get into Loki. Versus, if we go into the female aspects, we see where Hel and Hecate, Bastet, even, are three different traditional pantheonic goddesses. Hel being the goddess of the dead, or from the realm of the dead in Norse mythology. Hecate, we all know, is from the Greek traditions. And then you have Bastet, the goddess of cats, from the Egyptian mythology. Okay? But this symbolization of La Santa Muerte or Santa Muerte can be traced back to goddesses such as Lilith and Anna. Okay? Just naming two right there that are from the old traditions of death. Lilith herself has been compared to being the mother of demons, mother of the damned, to the queen of the vampires. Okay. She's been called many, many different things, but people forget that originally she was an angel who fell. Some refer to her as the whore of Babylon, whereas others refer to her as the mother, the concubine of Samael, and or, as Hel Mama raised, stated it, Satan. But it all comes down to the tradition that you study and practice. For an example, in Quimbanda, we see where they actually practice with demonolatry, such as Belial, okay, Leviathan, Beelzebub, and Lucifer, okay. They go into a bunch of praise and prayers towards them and the seven kingdoms, okay. When we get into Santeria, we see where there are the demigods known as the Ugan. These are the same as in traditional voodoo or hoodooism as being the Loa. Okay, and Loa is spelled a couple of different ways, from LWA to LOA. Okay, so you got a couple of different spellings there too, just like there is a different pronunciation of both La Santa Muerte and Santa Muerte. Now I'm just giving you a little history backdrop here, okay, just so you can actually see where things kind of go. But one of the other main things you have to take into consideration when practicing or studying about any form of tradition or practice is where its original roots were actually developed. Okay. Now, a lot of religions, such as voodooism and hoodooism, for an example, claim that Quimbanda, Santeria, Palo Mayombe, and Santa Muerte was actually originally from the Yoruba people out of Africa. That it's all traced right back to that one little city near the Nile River. However, if we think of traditional witchcraft, we think of Europe, okay, where most of the witch trials and burning times took place over the years. But this is far from it. Witchcraft has been around in many different forms. The gods have been around in various different forms throughout the world's religious and philosophical belief systems. Okay. And then you have individuals who are literally death worshippers. Okay. I've never been one for the living, namely because they piss me off too much. And I prefer to stay away from most people. So the only time I get around people is when I'm at work or I'm doing my minister aspects through my order, the Order of the Black Thorn. So outside of that, I prefer to keep to myself and help those who chime in from time to time. But as for Santa Muerte, the practices of Santa Muerte are a lot different from those of La Santa Muerte. For an example, in La Santa Muerte, it is all about love and light. Think of the Wiccan and pagan traditions versus, say, for example, black magic and say, for example, Satanism. Okay, two various different thought forms. Okay, so I mean, in La Santa Morte, when they pray to her, they always bring offerings such as blood sacrificing. They'll sacrifice an animal, a chicken, stuff like that, and they will literally put in prayer requests. They'll lay down. They'll come crawling on bended knee, crying and begging for her help. This is how serious these individuals take this religion. Okay. Very, very, very seriously. And they believe wholeheartedly. Okay. Very, very interesting. However, in the other aspect, you have Santa Morte, which is mostly practiced, like I said, in the southern parts, mostly the southwestern parts of the United States, down into Latin America, such as Mexico, down into South America. And this particular branch of Santa Morte has various different means. And a lot of people associate it with criminal activities such as prostitution, child sacrificing, different different types of criminal activities, and that get a lot more heinous than that. And most of this is because of the fact that it's considered a fear tactic. Okay, a fear tactic is something that is used by someone to intimidate. Okay, now the best way to describe this for those of you who are not initiated into Santa Morte is think of the movie Predator 2, starring Danny Glover. Or was it Danny Glover? Yeah, I think it was Danny Glover. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie. And taking place in LA. Okay. It's and that's right, it is a very good movie. I actually enjoyed it. I own all of them. But the thing is that think of the voodoo aspects of it. Okay. Hanging the victims upside down. Okay. Headless. Okay. That's a fear tactic in itself. But when it comes to the religious arts, okay, you can actually compare it to what they did by the painting on the chest, slitting the throat, okay, and bleeding them out, okay, taking the soul of the victim, okay. But in this case, Santa Morte isn't just a practiced religion, but it's also has ties into the underground, such as criminals, such as the drug dealers and mob that's out of Latin America and South America. Okay, they utilize this thing as this goddess and their ways as a fear tactic, and a lot of this is hanging tongues on doors. You know, dead rats, for an example. Leaving some form of symbolization of Santa Morte at their victims' homes or potential victims as a way to keep the people silent, but in their control. Now, what's interesting here is that Santa Morte takes on a various different type of means. Number one, she's a goddess of healing. She is a goddess of protection. She is a goddess of death, and she's a goddess of love. She is a multifaceted saint known as Holy Death. Okay. Very, very, very awesome goddess to work with. Trust me, I've been working with her for a while, and it is amazing how she can deal with things. Okay. For an example, the other night I did a ritual and I went to her and I ended up praying to the gods, and I went into my altar room for a specific thing. And next thing I know, I've been directed right to Santa Morte. And it was kind of interesting because everything worked out in the end. So I mean, it was pretty cool. And that's what I'm talking about when you're talking with Santa Morte. When we're dealing with Santa Morte, depending on your need, what your depiction is of what is going on in your life, you can go to her. She will listen. She will help you. She will guide you. But keep in mind that much like the Judo-Christian God Jehovah, Holy Death, Santa Morte herself, the bony lady, is also a very jealous goddess. She's a very jealous deitess. And I can tell you this, that many people who have dealt with her, that has actually neglected her, has actually felt her wrath, because they've ended up losing just about everything until they've come around and started paying more attention to her. This is why with Santa Morte, it is best to literally go in the morning, light a candle, and just let it go. Sit there, bring offerings, and leave it there and exchange it daily. If you want to change it, multiple times, fruits, vegetables, herbs, plants, candles, flowers, even rubies or some form of jewelry, gems. These are type of offerings that you can actually give. But one of the biggest things that most people overlook when dealing with Santa Morte is blood sorcery. And this is tied into a lot of deities as well. For an example, why is it that one of the questions that keeps popping up is, why is she associated with owls? Owls is an animal, a spiritual totem that goes all the way back to Lilith, even associated with some of the 72 Goetic demons of the Goetia in King Solomon's clavicle of Solomon, which is very, very interesting. Like Stolas, for an example, looking like an owl. He appears as an owl. Andrus, for an example, is another one. Prime example of an owl and the representation of that owl. Now, you got to remember that an owl represents lunar activity, as meaning nocturnal. Okay? So you really have to get really versed in what it is. Dan Brown is actually very, very good. But there's so much more to that. There's other authors, other practitioners out there that have come forward with their own versions. And I've actually got a few of them right here, for an example. Before I started doing this video, I went into my altar room where I keep my personal library, and I pulled up some of my first books on Santa Morte out. And the first book is called La Santa Morte by Thomas Prower. Very, very good book, and it looks like this. This got me interested in the Spanish and South American traditions of La Santa Morte, or just plain Santa Morte in general. He goes into talking about how a lot of practitioners of Santa Morte gets involved in it because they've come from various different means, such as other traditions like Christianity, paganism, Wicca, Satanism, whatever, because everything seems to have failed them and they found a home or a place with Santa Morte. Okay. Very, very good book. But he also goes into some of the types of rituals that he personally has utilized that work in his tradition or formulation of practice. Two others, and these ones here are my all-time favorite, because it was after I got these ones that I ended up seeking out practitioners and ended up getting initiated into Santa Morte. And it's called The Grimoire of Santa Morte by Sofia de Gregorio. Not sure if I pronounced her last name right, so Don't judge me on that one, all right? And this is volumes 1 and 2, okay? These ones here are very, very impressive. In the first one, you're dealing with the history of Santa Muerte, its route, its traditions, basically where it comes from, and its route that it's traveled from South America and from all the way back to Spain. And it's a very, very good one because it not only goes into actual prayers to Santa Muerte, but it describes the rituals. It goes into a cleansing bath of herbs and oils and stuff, mixtures. It goes into actual days of prayer that you can actually do certain prayers on certain days. And then it goes into other aspects as well from there, such as the colors of the candles, the animal totems, as I stated earlier. It goes into various different methods of use and meanings when it comes to the colors that Santa Muerte wears, especially the statue. Wearing black, she is the vengeance. She is the venom that kills your enemies. Red is the passion, the lust, the desire for something like, say, for an example, finding your mate, or say, for an example, getting that new job or whatever. And then you have white, which is the saint death aspect. She is the listener, the nurturer, the mother. Okay. And then you can go in from there with the different colors. And lately, while I'm on that topic, lately in groups, I've been seeing these photos of, they're now coming out with multicolored aspects of her image, much in the same way as they did with Baphomet, Baphomet, you know, and I guess it's now a representation of the gays and the lesbians and stuff. So it's their take on it, which is okay. I mean, it is their choice to do, but do you really want to tempt fate in that area? If do you really want to, become like a Christian and just rewrite everything every so often? I think these gods deserve a lot more respect, especially Saint Death. But that's just my opinion on the matter. But then you go into book 2. Book 2 goes into actual rituals, such as healing, personal protection. Let's see. Occult powers and high spiritual status. Okay. And ironically, I opened up to the page with an owl. Who would have thought that? But anyways, and then it goes into a lot of other things, such as the keys, the locks. It goes into prayers, talking to our Father, for an example, and their own take of it. And it's very interesting on how they did it. Think of it as an initiative grimoire that allows you to grow, to have a better understanding of it. And that's one of the grimoires that I would recommend for the new initiate, the one who's wanting to become an adept in any aspect of Santa Morte. Namely, because of the fact that it gives you that idea, it gives you that basic understanding about the purifying bath. It gives and the ingredients thereof that goes along with it. I will tell you this though: make sure you have some form of net laid down over the drain and a very good shower head, because of the fact that these herbs will get everywhere and they are a pain in the ass to clean up. So, um, is goth straight? Are you referring to gothcraft, or are you talking to the fact that I'm dressed in black? If you're referring to me, the answer is yes, I am straight. I have a son and I live with his mother. As for the actual practice of Gothcraft, you can be anything that you want to be. You can be gay, lesbian, straight, bisexual, it doesn't matter, even straight. You can do, the same things, practice witchcraft, vampirism, whatever. That's Gothcraft for you. So a lot of Gothcraft practitioners get into things like BDSM. There's a lot of different territory in that area. So if you like pain and torture, you know, um, restraints and stuff like that, that's the type of stuff that you want to go for. But I would advise you to be careful. There's a lot of money out there that gets passed around, and it's also can be associated with the group. What was that name? What was it there? It used to be callame.com, but now it's was it callame.net, I think. But so yeah, it's a group where you can actually become a master, slave, dom, and submissive. Depending if you're into that type of stuff, and then you got all the other aspects that go along with it, like bondage, role playing, whatever. A lot of, like I said, a lot of practitioners of Gothcraft get into that type of stuff, whereas others in like witchcraft and traditional witchcraft get into things like Dungeons and Dragons, the Star Game, live role playing um, games like that. Personally, I don't really care about that type of stuff. It's childish to me, but namely because I'm more interested in the practice and the worship aspects of forming relationships with these beings, such as Saint Death herself. And as I said earlier, they are also tied into Quimbanda. This one here is Quimbanda, the Cult of the Red and Black Flame, by Danilo Capini. Again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but still, it's there. Um, Deals with a lot of sigillions, deals with a lot of history, deals with a lot of beings, and one of which is the Great Exu King. Very, very interesting read on that one. Deals with Beelzebub, Lucifer, Belial, and Leviathan. But it also goes into things like geometry, like the triangle of evocation. Goes into the crossroads, which tie into voodooism. Deals with the crossroad type aspect of Aguilaret, whose symbol is the exact same measure of a crossroad. Okay, you can actually look that up in S. Connolly's book, the complete book of demonolatry, or the complete book of demonolatry. She's got a couple of them that are very, very similar. A lot of good information she has on that stuff. But if you're interested in things like animal sacrificing, human sacrificing, one of the richest cultures around is the Quimbanda and Umbanda practices. Namely, because of the fact that everybody around and even those who have actually practiced it and those who have actually been around it have said that it's the most bloodiest groups out there when it comes to practices. Now, it's in some ways it's a lot like Palo Mayumbi, where their traditions of animal sacrificing, depending on even hoodooism and voodooism deals with animal sacrificing. But it does come down to what you believe in and what you want to do. Personally, and I'm okay with animal sacrificing, but I do not practice it. I prefer my way of thinking is if you can't stand a little pain yourself, why would you put an animal through that? Okay. If you're not willing to draw blood from your own body, then why would you do it to an animal, especially one that is helpless and innocent? Okay. Now, I understand that these traditions go back centuries. Okay. I get that. It's just as a career sorcerer, a black sorcerer, or I should say a dark sorcerer, and practitioner of black baneful magics, such as black magic, I would prefer to take my athame and draw blood from my own arm. My familiar curls up in my lap while I'm doing ritual because she knows she's safe with her daddy. Now, personally, if you sit there and you want to slit an animal's throat, such as a goat or a chicken, that's your choice. But here in America, there's actually laws against animal cruelty. Okay. So, I mean, you can't really go around doing that. Not that people don't do it, it's just, it's not recommended. But like I said, that comes down to you as the individual practitioner because a lot of these traditions go back centuries and a lot of people still cling to those diehard methods of the past, such as Haitian voodoo or Haitian hoodooism. Very, very rich history there. Um, from slavery, from slaves to rebels in the jungle, how they dealt with their former white masters, and I mean, it's just the history of it is spectacular. And it kind of gives you that perspective of respect when it comes to these arts and how they were forged, how they were brought together. So, I mean, going into all these different traditions are a way for you to actually get a bigger piece of the pie, so to speak, a bigger slice of that information in the ways because, like I said, it's like a tree. Each branch is a different denomination, a different style, tradition, or form. So you really have to get into it. Not only study it, but practice it. And a lot of people prefer you to be initiated before you do any type of ritual. But it doesn't mean that you can't buy a few books and start practicing on your own. Now, recently, I was in a conversation with a man on Palo Mayumbi, and he and I were recently became friends and then turned around and became enemies because of the fact that in his eyes I was disrespecting the gods and the Loa and everything like that because he had a different opinion of how these practices are done. In this case, because I did not have the proper Niagara that is normally given to you um, when you're initiated into Palo Mayumbi. It's actually something that is handed to you. Now, because the person who initiated me doesn't live anywhere near me, I had to go to him. Okay, I had to go to that individual to be initiated. So it's a different thing. So this individual had an issue with the fact that because I didn't have that Niagara or that the Ganga as it's pronounced, that I utilized something. I kind of mix and match some things and actually created my own. And a Ganga is a home of the spirit that chooses to live with you and work with you. Okay, much in the same way as Saint Death. Saint Death is another one that, she when you erect an altar to her, that's her portal to you. That's the link between you and her. Okay, much like a Negra. And you do have to give offerings. I mean, some of the offerings that I found for Santa Muarte have been Mexico tequila or Mexican tequila. Personally, it's the flattest stuff out there and tastes nasty, in my opinion, because I'm more of a vodka, fireball, and rum kind of guy. You know, um, depending on my taste and what I'm in the mood for, I could easily go for an Angry Orchard or a Bud Light, Budweiser, whatever. But it comes down to your feeling and when you want to drink and stuff like that. But Mexican tequila has been one of the most beneficial offerings that I have found to her. Whereas, for an example, you can get into flowers. I recently became friends with a woman who has an association with a friend of mine, a student and apprentice of mine, a charge. And my charge actually recommended her to me because she's heavily into Santa Muerte and thought we'd have something in common. So I looked her up, and she accepted my friend request. We really haven't talked much. Lately, I've been watching just her videos on the topic and trying to get a sense and a feel from her point of view and where she's coming from. Now, with this aspect, her methods are a lot different from mine, and this is going to answer your question, Bastet Cobra. Is she ends up putting flowers, like say fake flowers with real flowers. She gives regular offerings of wine and flowers and stuff like that. Like foods and offerings, physical offerings, much like you do to any god, demon, angel, or the jinn. Genie wise, depending on which tradition, form, and style you're in. Whereas for me, the cigar or cigarette, the spitting of the wine, the alcohol over the Niagara, is a form of power, but it is also something that is very, very interesting, and it it shows authority. But at the same time, coming from a dark sorcerer who spent a lot of time in Satanism, witchcraft, shamanism, druidism, and voodoo and hoodooism, getting into Santa Muerte about well, it's been at least 5-6 years now since I've gotten into Santa Muerte and got initiated and all that stuff. When I was down, no, it was actually longer than that because I was down in Tucson at the time. Damn, wow, that was 8 years ago. Holy crap! Time flies when you're having fun. But yeah, you get a different sense of what they want from you and what they respond well to. For an example, in demonolatry, putting blood on the altar, you get a much better success rate. The more blood you offer, the better. That's why a lot of these traditions, such as African voodooism, will utilize. They'll cut off a dog's head and just let the blood drip all over the altar itself to the loa. Or I mean, I've seen these videos. Like I said, I've seen the videos. I've talked with priests and gotten associated with them and got into the practices and all these arts. And I can tell you that every single one of these loa, the ugan, the demons, the lords, and the gods and the demigods, they all respond differently to different offerings. Okay. For an example, I've tried Arbor Mist, the raspberry or the strawberry mixture of wines. I have tried the red wines. I've tried the dark wines. I've tried tequila. Tequila seems to attract her a lot more, at least in my opinion and my experience. But also by lighting candles and worshiping daily, you tend to get that sense that she's always there when you're praying to her, when you're giving those offerings to her. She's there accepting them. And when you're praying, depending on how you're feeling, what you're seeking, and you're giving these offerings, it's kind of like that whole sharing and taking type aspect. where you give with one hand and you take back with the other. And meditation, as you're breathing in, you're bringing in all this enlightenment, and as you're breathing out, you're getting rid of all that darkness, that negativity. And it's basically the same thing with any kind of offering. You're giving with one hand freely and opening, as an offering, be it chocolates, be it cakes, be it blood, be it wine, be it foods. Okay, you're going to get a different reply. Some things you're going to find out that she hates, or things that she just won't reply to. And then on the other hand, you're going to get stuff like, say, tequila or rum. She's a big fan of rum. I can tell you that right off the bat. And it was surprising that when I watched one of this new friend's videos, she actually recommended rum. And it's like, God damn, you know, this is we're both seeing the similarities, but we've got different practices. We got different methods here, and it's downright hilarious to see when you start associating with other practitioners and you start learning their ways and seeing what else you can do to better your own connection with her, be it her or any of these other Ugan or Loa demons, angels, the jinn, whatever, these spirits, these entities, these deities. You're gonna find things that are similar. You're gonna find things that are that she doesn't, like I said, are different. But it's that mutual respect that you share with each other that helps you learn and grow. I've been I'm in quite a few of these groups with Santa Muarte, but also Santeria, Palo Mayumbi, and Quimbanda, and Voodooism and Hoodooism, Satanism, witchcraft and paganism groups. And I can tell you, I'm seeing more and more of these young pups coming in with a chip on their shoulders, trying to make a mockery of things. And it's like, yeah, I can tell you right now, the gods themselves are just laughing their asses off at you, because the only person making a fool of yourself is you. You make a mockery of them, they're gonna, make a mockery of they're gonna sit there and laugh at you, not with you. And when you get somebody that's more experienced, it's a lot of disrespect, and there's no respect anymore in a lot of these groups. In the old days, there was always respect. You sit down, you talk about things, you talk about the arts, and you share your experiences, and they would sit there and do the same, and you'd listen, and you could always learn something new. Nowadays, if you try to teach on things like, say, for example, the terminology of warlock, you get a gangbang of, oh, that's an oathbreaker and betrayer. You get bullied, you get harassed, you get run out of groups, because they're sitting there hounding you and hounding you and hounding you. But and yet, as soon as you stick up for yourself, you're the bad guy and booted. Okay, and that's what I'm talking about with the matter of disrespect. If you can't respect the gods, such as Santa Muerte, and to give her and them what they need, why do you think they're not going to give back to you? It's that give and take, mutual respect, forming those relationships with them. It is the same thing with other practitioners. Now, I happen to notice that Lilith here is on here, and I'm going to get to you. I'm going to pick on you in just a second here, but first, I want to answer something that's right up at the top here by Kenneth Anger. Have you ever summoned a dead cat? Number one, summoning something from the dead is different from Santa Muerte and from the topic at hand. Summoning a spirit is a form of chiromancy. Okay? Chiromancy is associated with necromancy. Okay. It is one of the reasons necromancy is considered the first of the seven forbidden arts. It is considered the blackest and the darkest of all arts and practices because it deals with the dead. Now, through the last 1,000 years, we've seen three various different spellings and meanings of necromancy. Necromancy, in about 1,000 years ago, used to be associated, or I should say, another name for shamanism today, dealing with herbs and plants and blood, and different types of fluids like blood sorcery. And think of the Witch of Endor, prime example right there. Many practitioners have touched on that. But many people really don't get into the actual practice. They don't get into the actual methods and going through mythology and history and getting into the actual research mode of who has done this type of stuff. Now, when it comes to chiromancy is a form of spiritual contact, much in the way of today's divination aspects, the scrying mirror, the scrying bowl, the crystal ball. Okay, tarot cards, also known as cartomancy. Okay, that was created back in, what was it, the 16th, 17th century area. Okay, now 500 years ago, we see a whole nother style of necromancy. Okay, where it becomes known as nigromancy because it was more of, at least from what I can tell, it was more of a different association from the original necromancy from 1,000 years ago. It went from an NY to an NI. Okay, NI, should say that's actually backwards. It was an NI back about 1,000 years ago, and now, and about 500 years ago, it became an NY. Okay, nigromancy. Okay, which was associated and considered to be a part of the dead. This is found in the Clavicle of Solomon, the Constitution of Pope Honorius, okay, and the Grand Grimoire. These are things that are associated with occultism today. And then nowadays, it is now associated with dead bodies. Over the last 100 years or so, it has been associated with dead bodies. Therefore, it becomes necromancy with an E, not a Y, not a E, but a necromancy. In Greek, necromancy means the practice of the dead. It's actually the practice thereof. So you really have to know what you're talking about. Okay, so sacrificing any form of animal, it comes down to what you're willing to do to contact the gods and to serve the gods, depending on the tradition and the formulation that you are practicing. But to actually bring a spirit back, that's a whole nother topic. Now, very few practitioners have actually had the opportunity to manifest through a summoning, such as an evocation or an invocation. In this case, Kenneth, you're referring to an invocation. Okay. An invocation is where you manifest a spirit inside of a triangle of evocation while you're standing inside of a circle of power. Okay. Modern day pagans and Wiccans refer to the circle as a protective mannerism. It is a protective circle. That is not true. The circle itself manifests power through your workings. Okay. It enriches your workings. Now, the way you manifest a spirit through invocation is with a bunch of smelly herbs and a lot of incense smoke, be it from a burn pot or, say, for an example, a lot of chanting and a lot of prayer. This stuff takes days, if not weeks, months to actually manifest. It's not just something really quick. Me personally, I've manifest a few images of different things, but never once has it been a cat. I've seen a dragon. I've manifested dragons. I've manifested demons' heads, demons and stuff like that, but never a cat through my rituals. Let's see. What else do we have here for writing before I go on? Well, you consider if you got the owls, Lilith, I've got the cats. I got three. One's on that chair, one's on the couch, and the other one's right around the corner on the shoe rack, laying on the coats. So yeah, we all have our own totems. We all get along with certain animals, because when it comes to familiars, the witch's aid, they come in different things. But and then the last book I'm going to show you today is Santeria, the Religion, by Magine Gonzalez Whippler. Again, it's these Latin names, very hard to pronounce. So if I get it wrong, I apologize. But anyways, this book here describes a lot of things. It talks about the Loa. It talks, I should say, the Ugan. It talks about the practices, the histories. It goes into some of the workings. But it also goes into these splinter cells. Now, I've talked to Paleros who have their own opinions, and a few of them have actually stated that Santeria is actually a false religion. It is something that was a splinter cell off the true religion, which is Palo Mayombe. And even though you see a lot of videos on the topic of Palo Mayombe being the darker side of Santeria, it has literally nothing to do with Santeria. Now, through my own personal experiences, this seems to be true, at least so far. I've only been into Palo Mayombe now for about maybe 5 months. So, and I'm still working at it, along with Quimbanda, which I've been practicing that one and researching it for a little over a year and a half. So I'm still young in those two religions, those two path workings. So it's, I'm still learning it. But you see the similarities between them and the differences still. But when it comes to working with Santa Muarte, keep in mind that she is a very, very jealous goddess. She's a very, very jealous saint. But as I said, Lilith here is on board. Now, you notice I mentioned enemies and misinformation earlier. Okay? Misinformation is always passed along. If you get a book on a topic such as Santa Muerte, you're only getting a fraction of what the actual practices are about. Okay? And when people try to inquire about those paths because they've gotten their hands on a said book, they're normally told not to practice anything because you're not initiated. Well, let me put it to you this way. If you've been initiated into any traditional magical system, you're initiated already. Plain and simple. The question comes down, are you initiated in a particular religion, or are you initiated into all magics? And that's what it comes down to. If you're initiated into all magics, guess what? You can go into any pantheon. You can work with any deity. You can work with any god or goddess. It does not matter. Now, I would recommend that if you do decide to get into any tradition, that you first do your research. Always study it and figure out if this path is for you. And the reason I say this is because I'm about to state that there's a book out there called the Celtic Golden Dawn book. Okay, and here's the thing: it's a year to practice and a day to reflect. Okay, this is the magical formula. You practice and research for a year, and then you reflect for a day. It is a system that I actually back up 100% because it allows you to get a full, detailed understanding of the religion or the path that you're getting into. And then you have a day to sit there and reflect over it in your mind, what you've studied, what you'd experienced, and then decide for yourself, is this the path for you? Okay. So also keep in mind that you're also going to get people who are going to knock on you. You're going to get haters. You're going to get attacked, especially as a public figure. For an example, because I'm a public figure, I'm known worldwide. Okay. I've I've traveled America from the southwest to the northeast. I've gone through Central America, up into New York, Ohio region. I've gone all the way down into PA and Florida, down into Louisiana, and across into Texas and Tucson. On top of that, I've dealt with people worldwide. So, I mean, I'm a pretty good sized public figure. And I started my order back in 2013, which was based off knowledge and wisdom. It's all about the arts. And the thing is that I've come across a few haters in my time. One of which is someone that both Lilith and I are dealing with currently. Her name is Telia Curtis, and her girlfriend Caitlin White. I've touched on this in other videos. I've I've gone into detail about what's going on and everything. And one of the things that I want to point out here is that Santa Muarte would be a prime saint to go to, okay, in this situation. Number one, she gives excellent advice. Number two, the wisdom that she shares is spectacular. Sometimes she'll speak to you. Other times, you'll just get an instinct, an inkling, or a feeling. Maybe this random thought will just pop into your head. She's got different ways of dealing with you, or at least communing. You can even utilize tarot cards to do it. But she's also known as the protector, and she will protect you from your enemies. But she'll also attack your enemies, okay? And she will literally eliminate them. Now, what I find interesting here is that what's it been, about a month now, give or take a week or two, Lilith, since Celia came at me with Caitlin, and I spent an entire 2 weeks digging up information and just putting it all out there. And I spent 2 weeks cursing and hexing them, placing curse after curse after curse nightly and daily and everything like that, using my own blood and selling their, and basically working with demons of hatred, anger, revenge, rage, and death. And what's ironic is the last time that I did this, a friend of mine who got in touch with me about 4 days after I started it asked me point blank, someone is fucking with you, aren't they? And I said, yeah, how'd you know? She said, because I've been paying attention to the Richter scale, and Maine is normally quiet when it comes to any form of earthquake magnitudes. But over the last few days, I've noticed spikes, small spikes, not enough to raise alarms to the mundane, but it's enough that somebody in the arts would notice it. And I said, yeah. And I went in and told her, I said, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's been going on over the last month. And she says, well, well, that explains the heat dome. It's like, yep. Because I was calling on the infernal, I was calling on hell. Had the gates opened, and about three-fourths of America was stuck in a heat dome for like a week. And it was funny. But then this time around, we're dealing with Telia Curtis, Caitlin White, Alfredo Martinez, and VK, you know, and then Gordon Carnes on top of that. So it was kind of an interesting time, and I ended up going to my altar with Santa Muarte. I went back and forth between. I lit all the candles, lit all the incense, called upon the gods and the goddesses, the saints, Saint Death herself, everything. Now, keep in mind that Saint Death is much like Hermes in Greek mythology, the messenger. She can go between the celestial and the shadow realms. So she can go both places, just like he can. And what's interesting here is not only did I call upon Santa Muerte, but I also called upon these gods of vengeance, these gods of death, destruction, the 36 deacons of plagues, destruction, catastrophes. I called on a whole bunch of them, and I just let loose what's that old expression from in the poems there? Right, let slip the dogs of war, so to speak. And at this point, I didn't really give a damn. I'd had enough. This is the second time these two idiots had come at me. So I went after them through the use of magic, through spiritual warfare. Now, since then, we've actually gathered evidence, enough evidence, especially Lilith here, who has gathered so much evidence, and that's just her, that Telia Curtis and Caitlin White basically, once put into the hands of the law, will be going away for a very, very long time, legally speaking. So, but while she's doing that, I'm watching their accounts, I'm watching their videos. And I'm watching because of the fact that I'm watching, there's a lot of time and a lot of space between their posts nowadays. Over the last few weeks, nobody really has heard from Caitlin White, also known as Lady Raven, aka Raven White. Okay, and who knows how many other names she's had. But Telia Curtis, on the other hand, she posted about a week ago on YouTube. About a month ago, she did another post, and then 4 months back. So she's getting further and further and further apart from all her little ramblings. So you're seeing that these curses and everything are working, but you're also seeing how their world is being torn apart on social media. Their reputations are being destroyed. People are seeing them for who they really are. It's like saying, you know what? We're going to pull the veil back, and we're going to show the world what you're really about. Yeah, see, Lilith here just confirmed it. And I concur. I mean, I've seen some stuff from Telia, but I've also had people sit there and send me stuff about her and what she's been saying as well. And for your information, Bastet, I'm a sorcerer, a warlock, and a devil worshiper. That advice there is about 28 years too late. Just saying. I've been practicing various different traditions, styles, and forms of belief systems for 28 years now. Most recently, getting into Palo Mayumbi, Quimbanda, and Santeria. So I love it. I love the arts. It's something that inspires me because I've learned to do things that a normal person would not be able to do. So to stay, so wouldn't don't mess with witches, or I wouldn't mess with witches. That's you compared to me. I don't fear anything. I don't fear death. I don't fear life. I don't fear people. But I do submit to the gods. I do submit to the Loa, and I do submit myself between holy death, Santa Muarte, because it is a sign of respect. Ah, Islamic tradition here, Shalom, which is also Jewish, if I remember correctly. I don't really submit to women that much. That's probably why I'm single. Normally, I'm the guy that seduces. Trust me, I've got a long list of married women that I have seduced away from their husbands. And I did it with a song in my heart because they were Christian. And at the time, I really hated Christians. If his God put them together, their gods put them together, guess what? I'd be the one to tear them apart. And I did it with a song in my heart. But as they say, when time rises, as time goes on, you mature, you become less haughty. You start paying attention to details and you start finding out that what you've done in your youth is not a good thing, but at the same time, it's something that you do that you don't need to worry about. Things that, you know, you kind of regret in some aspects. It's like saying for an example, we have a saying in hexcraft or cursing. If you're going to curse someone, make sure they deserve it. Make sure that they deserve it because there is no take backs. You want to know where the threefold law came from? It was actually originally written through Gardnerian witchcraft in New York City, no less. The threefold law of return is a Wiccan or witches paganism right that what you put out, you get back times 3 or times 10 or times 100 because there's like 3 different formulations of that saying. But look at it from a satanic point of view. If I went around and cursed every prick that pissed me off in a run of a day, I'd be the only one alive. You know what I'm saying? So you really have to sit there and wash most of it off. Just shrug it off. Unless they make a personal attack on you, who cares what they do? Telia and Caitlyn did a personal attack. And that's what they're known for doing. They get a hair across their ass and they attack and they attack and they attack and don't really give two shits about their reputation because they are young. Telia is only like 22 years of age. Caitlyn, I think she's like 25, 26 area. So, I mean, compared to me, who's almost 40, okay, they've got a lot of maturing to do. They've got a lot of catching up to do. They're really not that powerful. Trust me, they're insects. You consider I made Telia. The only reason I'm an enemy of Telia Curtis is because when I was teaching in her group, I made her look like an amateur. I made her look stupid. I made her look foolish. And this is because of the fact that she claimed to have worked for a government agency. She claimed to have known the amendments, the constitutional amendments of freedom of religion and what it stood for. She claimed Satanism was not a protected religion. Even when I supplied her with actual proof, literally, while I was having this conversation with her, I had the freaking book in my lap. Seriously. I just took a snapshot of it and posted it in the group. Next thing I know, I'm banned from the group. And all it was is I made her look stupid. I made her look like an amateur, but instead of admitting that she was wrong, she cut and run. Then she started bad mouthing me to every Tom, Dick, and Harry who would listen. And it's still funny. I mean, I basically knocked her down a peg or two several times since then, and she still gets up and comes back for more. It's like she likes getting an ass whooping, basically, or in this case, a verbal one. And then you have Lilith here, who gave her an ultimatum and told her who she can and can't be friends with. And when Lilith chose not to obey that, Telia cut and ran yet again and has been going down her friends list, bad mouthing her, calling her a fake, and everything like that. And trust me, there's been a few other things that I've heard about, but that's not my story to tell. That's hers. So she gives half truths. Telia Curtis gives half truths. She gives just about enough information to whet the appetites, but she doesn't give any references. And yet she sits there and accuses me of plagiarism, even though I've given plenty of references, credits to the authors, the whole kit and caboodle, and yet I'm the plagiarist. And yet she sits there and doesn't do this stuff. And everybody's wrong, everybody's evil but her. She's the goody two shoes. Well, her reputation's in the dump, literally. Because she's got a lot of people gunning for her scalp. And yes, I just utilized a Native American Apache terminology. And you can actually read Telia's comments right there yourselves. So by going to Santa Muarte, you can actually see where the power can come from. You put everything in her hands. You tell, if you're honest with her and just say, hey, this is what's going on. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. If you want to cry, you want to bawl in front of her, go right ahead. I don't think she really cares about that. But she's a good comforter. She's a good place to talk to. She's got, she lowers her ear to hear, to listen. But more than that, ever since that day in the altar, not one thing has been said about me from certain individuals. VK has gone off doing his own thing. Nobody's heard from Alfredo Martinez. And Gordon H. Carnes came back on bended knee apologizing to me and wanting to straighten things out like a man, man to man. You know, so I mean, that just leaves Telia Curtis and Caitlin White. So they're losing ground rapidly. They're literally losing ground. They're losing popularity. Their reputations are going in the dumps. They've lost money. Caitlin White has stolen money from the traditional Church of Satan, run by Robert Fraze. She's sitting there running her mouth. They're running their mouth about everything and everyone. And more people are awakening to seeing who they really are. So if you think about it, it's like a very slow, painful death. And, I don't mean to quote from a Christian, but there's a guy here on Facebook who claims to be an ex, well, let's just say he claims to be an ex something. In one video, he claims to be an ex-devil worshiper. On another, he claims to be an ex-Satanist. On another, an ex-Palo Mayumbi and Santeria practitioner. On another one, he claims to be an ex, whatever. And here he is thanking God that he was saved because he's now a Christian ever since he met his wife. So, to quote him on this one, yeah, that's actually true. Sorry about that. I was paying attention to the writing here. To the right of my screen. Lilith is actually writing a bunch of stuff here, along with Bastet. Trying to keep up on it as well. Anyways, he said, and I quote, I'm going to use my own terminology here, is he would go to church because he thought it was a joke. He thought it was a game. But then he would spend all night in the devil's church, sacrificing animals, doing blood sorcery. And if he didn't have a chicken or a rooster, he would slice his arm open and use his own blood on his altar. Okay. And that's basically what he just a couple of things he actually had right. But when we're thinking about Telia Curtis and the gods, is that John Ramirez stated that to destroy something in the physical realm, you must first go into the spiritual. Okay. And this is actually very, very true no matter what tradition you're in. These gods, these goddesses, the Loa, the Ugan, the Saint Death, demons, angels, they're all from a different realm. They're all from a different reality, okay, a different dimension. When we think of things on a universal way compared to, say, for an example, the multiverse, okay, you're dealing with different dimensions. You're dealing with different aspects of light and dark, okay? And when we think about this, Telia Curtis is one of these fakes who is only in it to cause trouble and division and cause adversities between people. And this is one of the reasons why these traditions and these arts have such a bad reputation, is because of some of these morons that do more damage than good, and they're too stupid to actually think about their actions. So that's actually true. If you actually watch his videos here on YouTube, Lilith, you'll laugh your ass off. Trust me. I can't tell you how many times I've watched his videos and just laughed because he got so many things wrong. But the thing with Gordon though is he's got some mental health things going on. Again, that's not my story to tell. But what I can tell you is a lot of what he does, you cannot hold against him because of that mental disease, that mental disorder. However, the things that he does knowingly, that is what I hold against him because he is responsible for his own actions at that point. But like Lilith has said he apologized. And since this is the first offense, you can overlook it. But when dealing with the gods and the goddesses, such as Saint Death, there are different formulations of her. And depending on the color of the wardrobe that she wears, is what you would utilize for that ritual, that event. Now, let's say, for an example, you don't have a statue of Saint Death. You can go to any occult bookstore or shop and pick up a skull. Okay, go to Luciferian Apotheca. You can order one for like 25, 26 bucks. Okay, I think mine cost roughly about $24, if I remember correctly. No, and I paid shipping and handling and everything came to almost 30 bucks. So I mean, it's reasonable. You can also go to places like Cocapelli's. Um, you can go to, let's say, for an example, azurgreen.net. Okay. Azurgreen.net is pretty cool because they do have a lot of statuary figures from various different traditions. I believe they have, don't quote me on it, but I believe they have one of Saint Death, if I'm not mistaken. I believe she's in either black or red robed. You can go to Amazon.com or eBay and look up the statues there. You're going to be paying a lot more, but it's there. Okay. But let's say, for an example, like I said, you can get a skull. Skulls throughout history have been associated between the doorway. They've been a gate, kind of like a key, lock and key type gate between our physical world and that of the spiritual. And you can actually talk to it just like you would to your wife, your husband, your son, your child, your daughter, your friends. Kind of like what you and I are doing right now on this web link. Okay, so you can um, utilize just a skull and call forth the beings because the skull represents death, the symbolization of death. Therefore, once the physical is relinquished, all you have is the spirit. So it is that link between the two worlds, the two realms. And there's a lot of different methods that you can learn over the years on how to, for an example, you have ways of improvising with your tools. I've got a friend who is a new member to my coven, and he actually utilizes a steak knife for anathema. Okay, because he didn't have the money to go out and get anathema. Okay, a black cereal bowl could be used as a divination bowl. Okay, so there's different ways that you can actually utilize stuff around your own home as ritual tools and items. So that's something for you to contemplate on. And the more you get into the arts, the more you get into the practices, you're gonna learn this stuff. And that's something that's pretty cool. Is you learn to utilize what you have, not what you need. You may need some stuff, but that can come in time. But for right now, you got everything you need right in your own home, from herbs to plants. Most homes have some form of flowers in them. Most homes have in your kitchen or your pantry all the herbs and spices that you'll ever need. Okay, and in Santa Muarte, amber, rosemary, basil, you know, thyme. These are just some of the herbs that you'll need. Okay, that you'll be able to use in your practices of Santa Muerte. Okay, especially the ritual bath. But like I said, if you do the ritual bath, make sure to put something down that will help you clean up a lot faster. It took me an hour and a half to clean out the bathtub after my invitation. Trust me, when you got two bad knees, that sucks. That's all I gotta say. But anyways, with that said, uh, let's go down here real fast. Yeah, I can. I can manipulate it. I've actually surprised a few of my friends. We went to the store one night, and all I did was just raise my hands and said, hold. I concentrated, focused, said, hold, hold, 3 times. The wind died down, and the heavy downpour dropped down to a drizzle. I've increased storms. When it's supposed to be a day, it lasted 3 to 4 days. Hell, at work, my new job, 2 days into my new job, I amplified a thunderstorm, freaking out a coworker who was petrified of the thunder and lightning, which is kind of ironic because she's a full grown woman. So she should know by now it won't hurt her unless she gets struck. Oh. But anyways, so yeah, you can act. There are plenty of storm spells out there. There are plenty of different methods to do it, but you have to have complete understanding of the energies that you're manipulating. You have to first learn the energies inside yourself before you can manipulate the energies outside of you. And that is more tied into more advanced practitioners. Let's see. Let's see. That's true. But like I said, that's not my story to tell. That's his, Lilith. Let's see. True. And yes, Amazon. And that's actually true. So, that's this video on Santa Muarte. I've been on here almost an hour and a half. Holy crap, time flies. First of all, for those of you who are serious in this video and asking serious questions about occultism, I want to thank you for taking time and actually participating. You can always get in touch with me, through Facebook or Messenger, or even on here. I'll always reply. It may take some time if I'm at work when you reply, when you post or comment or ask a question, and I'll reply when I get out of work. Of course, you got the time differences too. So, but like I said, I will always reply. Hope this video has been enlightening. Hope it's been educational, and hope it helps you along your own individual path and journeys into your magical and spiritual developments. That's actually a very good question. In some ways, it's pretty good. It's, people recognize you, they recognize your name. People go out and, those people that you've helped and actually aided in their issues and their topics, like, say, through, for an example, divination, such as cartomancy, tarot card readings. If you've helped them along their journey through, say, a 3-card read or even a 6-card read or whatever, and they go out and they tell your friends, hey, hit this guy up, he's the real deal. They're testifying for you. So, I mean, your name's getting out there, you're becoming popular, you're getting known. And I will tell you this, that sometimes you wake up and it's a complete shock, it's a complete surprise. especially when you realize, you're literally surrounded by all these bigwigs that are friends with you, and you're sitting there talking with them. Like, for an example, I'm friends with S. Ben Cayenne, Curtis Joseph, a few others from How to Become a Living God, Stephanie Connolly Reeser, Michael W. Ford, Jason Augustus Miller. Um, you know, um, I'm friends with I'm friends with Jason Miller. I'm friends with Raven Digitalis, um, author of Gothcraft. And he's got a lot of chains there. I'm friends with Alistair Notch. I've been friends with him for a few years now. He used to have a Facebook account, and now he's just got a page, and he also does videos right here on YouTube. So I mean, and I've been a follower. I'm friends with S. Connolly, S. Connolly, and I'm also friends with a couple publishers. And it's like you wake up one day, and it's like, God damn, I feel like a freaking pinto fish in a swarm of sharks. I mean, when you realize how many bigwigs you have on your friends list and that you're communing with, and it's like these guys are friends with me. It's that complete shock that it's almost overwhelming that they actually consider you respectfully as one of their own. You know, but I've also had people come to me and ask and basically look at me as an elder. I used to work with a girl that at Tractor Supply that she referred to me as an elder because of the fact that not only am I an ordained minister that's recognized by the United States government, but I'm also running my own order. So, as the head of an order, you're considered an elder. It's like being a priest or a priestess in a coven. It's the same exact thing. You're an elder, therefore you deserve respect. But I'm also known worldwide for the people that I've helped because they've gone out and told people about me. But like all good things, you've also got a downside. And one of those downsides is that you're gonna attract the unbalanced. And when I say unbalanced, I mean those who with childish intent, those with mental issues who just cannot grasp the differences between the styles or the traditions. You got those who are more interested in causing mischief and trouble than to actually learning. And trust me, in the 5 years that I've been doing this stuff publicly, I've done a lot of good. I've helped a lot of people, but I've also come across a few that have, let's just say, they've kind of make you wonder what's the point in doing this, because on one hand you got all this positive stuff, but on the other hand, do you really want to put up with the bullying, the harassment, the down, the judgments, and all this other stuff that goes along with it? Every celebrity tends to go have to deal with both, the positive and the negative outlooks. But I don't really refer to myself as a celebrity, you know. And yeah, exactly, Lilith. EA Koetting, prime example. I mean, this guy has put up with so much flack, and every time he just bounces back 10 times more potent, 10 times more powerful. And you gotta respect that. And one of the things that people have admired about myself is the fact that I don't let this stuff get to me. I don't get involved in drama or chaos. You know, for me, it's all about the arts. It's all about the practice. It's all about the knowledge, the hidden gnosis of the arts themselves, and finding that knowledge. And if people want to follow, that's cool. You know, if you want to get into it and learn, that's awesome. I'm willing to guide you. I'm willing to teach you. I'm willing to show you the path. up until the point, depending on which path it is, that I've studied to. And then you're on your own from there. But I've also had people that refer to me as the only priest or minister that they would go to. So I mean, I've got a small band of friends that I call family because of the fact that they're loyal, they're trustworthy, and they're just like me. But I've also got friends and allies that are out there that, you know, some of them kind of bounce back and forth like a fish out of water. But sometimes it really is draining. Sometimes it feels just like somebody has put a leech on you and they're draining you of your blood, your life essences. So that's the type of negativity that you got to deal with, and the types of things that you got to deal with when, not all talk is good talk, because some people will literally bash you just for the sheer pleasure of it. And if you like I said when I was talking about Telia, is that I made her look like an amateur. I made her look like a fool because I showed her the actual proof of what I was speaking on. And she couldn't handle it and she cut and ran. And she chose to attack after that point and continue attacking. So that part's on her. But you're going to have to deal with this type of stuff. And for me, I tend to ignore a lot of it because it's all about, like I said, it's all about the arts. But there are some times when, it kind of just hits you like, what's the point? Okay. When are you going to knock it the hell off and grow up and just learn? You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, on one hand, you're energized. You're there to teach. You're there to guide. And on the other hand, it's like somebody's put an anchor down. So it kind of just slowing you down. And being a public figure and how fame has affected me, emotionally speaking, it's on one aspect, it's kind of draining. Like you just want to curl up in bed and just sleep for like a week, maybe a lifetime or two. But on the other hand, it's also making you stronger because you're learning to deal with more and more of this flack, this negativity. Because everybody's got a right to an opinion. Everybody's got a right to um, their own viewpoints, and you got to take that with a grain of salt, because you're dealing with just a small portion, a fraction of the populace. Whereas most of the populace will look at you and go, "Wow, this guy knows his stuff." But then you got a good size amount of them that really want to learn and they're following you. For an example, on my Facebook account, I have over 1,000 people that are following me from various different traditions, styles, and forms of magical practice. And even though a lot of them don't agree with a lot of what I teach or practice or the way I guide or the material that I put forth, there's always that respect, you know. But at the same time, they don't really get involved in your lessons. They don't really get in touch with you and say, "Hey, this is kind of cool. I'd like to know more about this." Or, "What do you think about this type of stuff within your practices?" They don't ask questions or anything. They just sit there and silently watch and watch and watch. And sometimes it makes you wonder, are they really there to participate? Or are they just going to be a leech? One of those, well, kind of like those people you see on the commercials for like Geico or not Geico, but you know what I mean, the ones that are hanging on the car for the insurance companies, trying to get you to cause an accident type thing. Somebody on the hood, blocking the window. You know what I'm saying? That type of stuff. And so you really have to discern who's following you and who's not. Most of the questions that you get are excellent questions. Like, for an example, Mustat, you've asked a couple of good questions, you know, and they're serious questions too. Like, have you ever summoned a dead cat? Okay, boom, Chiromancy. I've practiced it. I do it all the time. I work with the dead a lot because that's, as a dark practitioner, I'm associated with the shadow realms. I live in two different worlds, much like a shaman. But at the same time, it does get, as Lilith just put it, you get sick of it. And you kind of just regress and kind of just step back from social media for a while. But what defines you as a sorcerer is getting back up there and getting right back out there, knowing that there's, just because one out of 10 people have a negative outlook, you're reaching 9. You're sharing your knowledge and your experiences with 9 other people. Okay. And that's what I try to keep my eye on. I can't tell you how many times I've told my students that it's not about those who are making jokes or treating the arts like it's a joke. It's more of the fact that my intent is to reach those who are dedicated, who really want to learn. And that's why I do my videos. That's why I teach. That's why I started my order back in 2013. Okay. So you really do get that. You do learn to delegate the different types of emotion, the different types of feelings, and the stresses that come along with being a public figure. And a lot of it is pretty cool. But like I said, there are some negative aspects that, you wish you can just live without. But like all things, you got to take the good with the bad. So that's just how it is in the public, as a public spectacle or a public fame. And Lilith here is one of my best students. She's dedicated. She's loyal. She's she's got a good head on her shoulders. And since I've met her, she's come a long way with knowledge. And I've got a few others that have actually made it a career. I've got a girl that I met online here, not on YouTube, but on Facebook. She was 13 at the time. And she was known for getting into a lot of trouble. She was just starting out in Satanism. And within 2 years, her father looked at me and said, I want to thank you for being a role model in my daughter's life. Since she met you and started learning from you, she has come a long way. Because not only did she start paying more attention in school, but she got a job, a part-time job. She ended up moving out, living on her own at 17 years of age. She ended up getting a boyfriend, even though the guy turned out to be a complete douche. Left her knocked up and without a father, somebody to help her raise the child, which is quite cowardly in his methods, I might add. But she has literally, excuse me, she has come a long, long way in her practices. My brother Brian, who's my best friend, my brother, he's like a blood brother to me. I've known him for about 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 now. And, he's come a long way. I mean, when I first met him, he was an atheistic Satanist. And now he's a Luciferian Satanist. He's working with the various different traditions, the masks of Lucifer and Satan. He's working with Lilith. He found his patron demon, his patron angel. He's working with seriously with various different styles of magic, and he's benefiting from them. And so these are just some of the examples of dedication to the arts that I'm referring to, not things like making jokes and spectacles of what's being taught as as a child would to, say, for example, a Catholic like a baptism type thing. They think, oh, it's a place for doing cannonballs, belly flops, ha ha, that you can see right through that bathrobe, whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's the type of jokes I'm referring to that separate real practitioners from the fake, you know, from the fakes, because of the fact that those who dedicate their lives to the service of these gods, like Santa Muarte, Saint Death, to working with Satan, Lucifer, demons, angels, the fallen angels, the angels themselves, working with celestial versus demonic attributes. Depending if you're working with animal guides or such as Native American lore, practices, herbalism, alchemy, all this stuff applies to your journey. So you can see what I mean by reaching out to those who seriously want to learn. Those are the ones that I want to reach. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah, my throat's getting a little dry. But anyways, but yeah, those are the people that I want to meet. Those are the people I want to mingle with. I spend a lot of time going between the Northeast and the Southwest, because for me, I want to be around all these serious practitioners. The ones that, well, like shamans, medicine men, priests, priestesses. The brujo, um, the poleros, and I want to be around these individuals who are serious about the arts, because I want to advance my own arts. I want to advance my own knowledge, my own experiences, and I also want to share those experiences with others. And that's why it's important to do videos and put these things out there so that you can actually get to those individuals. And when it comes to being a public figure, it's something that you got to take into consideration. You're going to get both, positive reviews, but you're also going to get negative reviews as well. You're going to find lovers and you're going to find haters, and yeah, I just picked on you again, Lilith. Um, well, I love you. Yeah. So yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, you're gonna find those who like your work and want to know more, and you're gonna find those who are just gonna sit there and spit in your face. Celia Curtis is one of those type of individuals. Caitlin White is another, and they're just there to cause trouble, turmoil. So it's best just to get them out of your life. Pluck them out root and foot, so to speak. Get rid of them. Put them down the proverbial garbage disposal. Okay, boot them out into Timbuktu somewhere. Just get rid of them from your life, because all they are is leeches. They're going to do nothing good. They're going to do nothing that is worthwhile to even pay attention to. And that's one of the reasons I've learned to ignore a lot of this drama and chaos, because I've decided in my life I'm too old for this stuff. I'm at the point in my life where it's all about the arts. And I had my priest who's over in Africa in voodooism. One of the first contacts that I made with him, he said to me, you need to seriously, even though you got 5 very, very powerful demonic lords walking beside you, you need to get serious about your studies. And I didn't understand at the time. But what was ironic is I flashed back to what a female practitioner down in South Tucson mentioned to me once. She said, you're straddling a double-edged sword, and if time runs out, you get split in half, and you don't belong to any. I didn't understand what she meant by that, but then after talking with this voodoo priest, I found out what they meant. By getting serious in your practices, more good is coming from them, especially once you've applied it to your life. Yeah, sorry about that. Might be coming down with a chest cold too. It's been down to about the 30s, 40s for the last week up here, and we just had our first good-sized snowstorm, which was about 1 to 5 inches, which is kind of interesting because we got another one on the way pretty soon here. But I can say it's way too early for this snow. Maybe after another month or two. But the point is that when you make a decision to serve either the light or the dark, when you start applying the practices and the knowledge of your studies into your life, and you start working with these deities, these gods and goddesses, these saints, such as Saint Death, Santa Muarte or La Santa Muerte, you're building that repertoire with them. You're building up that relationship, that trust, and they're going to start sharing stuff with you. And you're going to be placing your trust in them. And before long, you've got a good sized relationship where you've actually written a grimoire or two to help your practices. You find out what works and what doesn't. And that's why seriousness about the arts is that the arts, and especially magical workings, are not fun and games. There's something that's very real. It's things that it has real physical applications to them. And that's why I take my practices very seriously. And if, to me, I know I'm going to find people who are just like me, but there's also those who are just, dabblers. You got the learned, you got the taught, you got the hereditary practitioners. I come from a long line of spiritual people. Being Native American myself, 25% on my dad's side, it's something that is a part of me. I grew up learning religions. I grew up learning about the gods and the myths, the legends. And before I knew it, my first application was at 5 years old. My first spiritual encounter was at 5 years old when Lucifer appeared to me in a big, bright yellow light. Spectacular. It wasn't until years later that I realized what it was. But imagine your parents' faces when you've never been told anything about Lucifer, you've never watched TV, you've never read any books about him, and you go up to your parents and you ask, "Who's Lucifer?" Wait, who told you that? Mind blowing. But that's what I'm talking about. You really, once you get serious and you build up these relationships, they're going to appear to you. They're going to help you. They're going to guide you. And before long, you're going to have a huge string of beings. They're there as teachers, guides, mentors, guardians, protectors. Even those who will go after people that you send them to. For example, if I did a curse and I'd call on, say, I don't know, let's go with Abaddon, the angel of destruction, Ariok the lion, Sabnuk, demons of anger and hate, and vengeance, Abraxas, demon of anger, who can amplify it and put nation against nation. type thing, and just send them after a target. And whatever your will is what they carry out. It's not because you're controlling them. It's because you've asked them for their help. You've gone to them and you say, "Hey, this is what's going on." You're putting all your anger out there, and your frustrations and your tears, your blood, and just saying, "Hey, they've drawn first blood." It's like working with Hecate. Same exact thing. She's the goddess of justice. So if you've called on her for justice because the legal system has failed you, guess what? She will deal with it. But make sure to keep your own nose clean. It's the same thing with Santa Muerte. If you don't keep your nose clean after after she decides to go after those individuals that wronged you, guess what? She's not going to deter between you and them. Okay? That is why I say show respect, show discipline, be serious about it. Okay? And one of the main things that you really want to pay attention to, especially when dealing with beings such as Santa Muerte or La Santa Muerte, is the fact that these beings are so great that by building up these repertoires with them, by building up the trust and the relationships with them, you're forging an alliance, especially if you've done some form of deal or pact. Making a pact with them is not sacrificing your soul as most people believe or have been led to believe, but more the fact that you're aligning yourself with a certain type of energy. Okay? For an example, dealing with certain energies, such as Santa Muerte, you can make a deal with her. You can even offer yourself as a sacrifice. You can offer yourself as a servitor, okay, to serve her, to be a dagger, to be um, an ambassador, okay. Whereas working with, say, a demon or, say, for an example, let's say Astaroth, you know, the Grand Duke. Most grimoires of the last 1,000 years, such as the Grand or the 2,000 years, like the Constitution of Pope Honorius, the Grand Grimoire, the Grand Grimoire Red Dragon, the Grimorium Vernum, just to name a couple, state that you have to threaten a demon with internal damnation, with internal torment, with a rod. Okay, this is a Christian forgery. And the reason I say Christian forgery is because a lot of enemies utilize works that were not their own. And that is to gain control over the populace. We see this throughout the Judeo-Christian history of how they came in offering friendship, sharing knowledge, wisdom, and then they start banning and conquering, and then putting to death anyone who stands in their way. Now, for an example, Bastet, you mentioned earlier Satan, a Jewish god. Let me tell you about Satan, okay? There are two types of Satans. Most people know the Judeo-Christian variation of Satan, meaning opposer, meaning tempter. He who opposes, he tempts and opposes what you stand for, what you believe in, okay? Therefore, anyone who likewise does this is considered of Satan. Therefore, that's why they say, "Get behind me, Satan." Okay? But then you have the physical entity, known as Satan. You have he is a Grigori, a watcher angel. He's one of the tens of tens that fell from the heavens and took wives amongst themselves. Okay? He was one of the chieftains. He was once considered the most gorgeous of angels, standing on Mount Hinnom with his giant black wings spread out. This is an early 10th century depiction of him, okay? With every order of angels hanging off his wings, okay? Grigori was the first order of angels. They were warriors. They were the first war in heaven. The first war for this realm, this earth, was fought by the Grigori. They were the perfect weapon. And over time, you ended up with archangels who ruled over lesser angels. This archangels were considered to be second class family, second class angels. And then you have the third class, which are healing angels, such as Michael the Prince. Okay. If we utilize the name Michael, okay, today in Hebrewism, Michael means he who is like God. But in cuneiform, 500 years ago to 2000 to 1,000 years ago, Michael meant soul collector. If we go all the way back to the time of Sanskrit, the name Michael means face of love. You see how things change over time. Okay? So you really do have to pay close attention to terminologies, but also who you're dealing with. The Greek definition of daemon means that a daemon is someone who is beneficial to the practitioner, whereas a cocodamon is someone who is baneful, harmful to the practitioner, to the human. You see what I mean? So this is where angels and demons came from, was from the Greek terminology of daemon. And that was after they conquered that region and incorporated some aspects and got rid of everything else. And this is something that takes place over years and decades and centuries. Okay, it's not something that's anything new. But with Santa Muerte, on the other hand, it's completely different because you've got one being with a bunch of different packages. Okay, she's loyal, she's trustworthy, she's a listener, she's a nurturer, she's a provider, she's a protector, she's the avenger. Lady Death, the saint of death, Santa Muerte. Now I've been a follower and a patron of hers now for, like I said, about half a decade, if not a little bit more. And I can tell you that her works are spectacular. It's the things that she's done is much in the same way as the Nine Kings of the Goetia. You know, she's opened doors. She's helped me through a lot of different things, and I know she'll help you too. But you also got to consider that Santa Muerte, or the practice of Santa Muerte, is one of the largest religions out there, and it's the fastest growing. La Santa Muerte is rampaging throughout North America. And that's according to this guy right here, Thomas Prower. So trust me when I tell you that even I've seen this through my travels. So learn who you're dealing with. Learn, just experiment. See what she likes, what she doesn't like. Because a friend of mine who, she puts flowers, she puts nectar, she puts herbs, she puts wines. Okay, whereas I put hard liquor. I give offerings of blood. I give offerings of prayer and worship. Okay, so you got two different methods, but we've both found something that works, that she responds to. Everything else is the difference. It's like having two different individuals, and that's always a good thing. It's how we learn. And I would rather be an individual than part of the sheep, the herd conformity, and being an average mundane. So, is there any questions on what was taught here or what was spoken of? Okay, then I'm going to end this video. And like I said, you can always get in touch with me. I'll always reply. I hope it's been enlightening. Hope it's been educational, and hope to see you next time. This Dark Sorcerer is out.